Welcome to our PHP web course. In this video, I will show you how to make a connection to the database and display the data in the web page. But first, I will look at the data in PHP So here I have my blog, which is my database, and I have one table, my_table. When I click on the name of the table, it takes me into the Browse tab, and I can see my data. I can see my header rows, and I can see that I have two rows or two records of data. Notice the ID. The first ID is number 1, the second ID is number 8. When we developed the structure for this table, these columns had an auto increment, which means the next record should be ID number 2. So why is it number 8? That is because I have been playing around with it, and I have created several records, and I have since deleted them. When you add a new record, the auto increment starts where it left off. Once those records are deleted, that ID number is never used again. When we are in browse mode, we see an SQL select statement here. It is saying select asterisk, which stands for all, from my table. What that is doing, it's telling the database to show me all of the columns in that table. You typically develop your SQL statements in PHP so that you can test them. Later, you will use those same statements in your PHP document. When we display our blog results, we do not care about the ID. We only want to see the title, entry, and date entered columns. Therefore, we can specify them in our select statement. And now you can see the result that we will have. We will only have 3 columns. Before we can display data from a database on the web page, we first need to make a connection to that web page. In this course, we are using the PDO object. This stands for PHP Data Object. The book uses a different object, MySQL, and we are not using that. To create a connection to the database, you need 4 pieces of data: the name of the server, the database name, the username, and the password. You can combine the name of the server and the database name in one string so that you only need 3 variables as opposed to 4. You always need to test to make sure that you have that connection before you try to retrieve data. We do this using a try-catch statement. In the try block, we create an instance of this PDO object. We pass it the 3 different variables, which holds the needed information, and we store it in a variable. My variable is $CONN for connection. Notice that I have an echo statement. This echo statement is purely for my own testing. If the connection is successful, the code inside the try block will be executed. If the code inside the try block has an error, the code inside the catch block will be executed. And here you see how we can set up the PDO object to execute error messages. Whenever you have an error message, you probably want to follow that by the exit function so that the code stops at this point and nothing else is displayed. Now that we have created the connection, I would like to show you a quick and easy way just to take a look at your results. I am using a simple select all, as we have previously seen. So I am storing my SQL statement in a variable $SQL. I am now executing the query method of the connection object, and I'm passing it that SQL statement by using the variable. I am storing that in a variable $result. Now I am executing the fetch all method on my object $result, and I am using the PHP print_r function, which allows us to see the values in an array, because indeed this is an associative array. Again, this is purely for testing purposes. These methods are all methods of PDO. If I were to view this file in localhost, you can see my test data. We start out with array 0 because this is an array. The ID column shows the value of 1. The title column shows the value of my first blog post. The entry column shows the value of what I wrote. The date entered shows the value of the date that was generated, and so on. Now we go to again, this is just for testing purposes. I'm showing you how you can look at your results before you start displaying them in the body section. I would like to point out that I am just testing my results. Your connection string, your variables, your try-catch statement will all be placed on top of the doc type, in addition to your other statements that work with the PDO object. They all belong on top of the doc type, regardless of what you may see in books or on the web. Now we will learn how to display the results inside the body. And here you see I have my 2 blog posts. Notice how nice my layout looks. If you look at the source code, every blog post is placed inside an article element, and the title, post, and date are all enclosed in paragraphs, and you see some other formatting here. Notice I have a lot of CSS going on. If more data was added to the blog, the posts would all be dynamically generated, and the color would be alternating. The goal is to create a template for the first blog post, and we use that template with a for each loop so that the data coming from the database is all placed inside that template. So here is the source code, and it's pretty much the same as what we have just seen. I have my connection variables up here. I have my try-catch statement. I just want to select 3 columns. I really don't care about the ID. I am using the query method on my connection object. I am passing it the variable that holds that SQL statement. I'm storing it in a variable called $result. I am executing the fetch all method on $result, which is going to return all of the records in the database, and I am storing it in this variable called $rows. At this point, I only have 2 rows or 2 records, but you could have many more. Notice all of this code is on top of the doc type. It does not need to be in the body. In the body, we have our for each loop, because our data is going to be generated from that for each loop using HTML concatenated with PHP code. So the for each loop will loop through every row in the database. It takes 2 variables. $rows, which we already saw, holds the associative array of all of the records as $row. $row is just a variable placeholder which indicates the individual row. Now I have an echo statement, which is putting the first article element on the page. Notice I have PHP escape characters so that the source code looks nice. I have a second echo statement, and I have coded in the word title. It is concatenated with $row title. So $row indicates the first row in the database. We pass it the value title title is the name of the first column, and this expression will return the value that was entered in that database. Now I am concatenating that with my ending paragraph and my carriage returns. So $row is a variable which represents the row in the database, and title is the column name, and this expression returns the value. The next echo statement is for the post. Notice I have coded in HTML and text the word post, concatenated with $row, and I'm passing that the column name entry. So this will return the value that the user entered for the entry column. And now I'm concatenating that with my HTML and my carriage returns. The next echo statement is for the date. So I code my HTML and the word date. I concatenate that with $row, and in the brackets is the column name, date underscore entered. And then I concatenate that with my HTML and my carriage return. So $row bracket date underscore entered will return that date, which is automatically generated in the database. Now I end my closing article and my carriage returns. So what we're doing is we're generating the HTML and we're placing the PHP code inside those HTML elements within this for loop. It's not a bad idea to sketch out the HTML and CSS first so you have an idea of what you want it to look like. It makes it a lot easier to write the code inside the for each loop. You don't have to generate your code this way. You also could use an HTML table, or there's many other ways in which you could lay out your results from your database.